Hi everyone, welcome to Samajho Learning. This is Rohit Dagar. This is the SMAP initiative, Samajho Mains Answer Writing Program 2020. This is absolutely free. If you want to participate, you simply have to log on to samajho.com and join us on Telegram, download the Samajho Learning app, and you will get access to all the high quality questions that we are posting every day morning 7 a.m. and you can write answers and get them evaluated by your peers and eventually by a team in the evening. There is a process and you have to know that process. Simply log on to samajho.com. I'll give you the links in the description and read this. You'll understand how this works. Right, so this is day 1 and the question was for geography. Kindly read the question so that we can move ahead. The context of the question was to explain the reasons for frequent earthquakes in the Indian subcontinent and what measures must be taken to mitigate their impacts in urban areas. A lot of students had put up answers and eventually went through them. The highest upvotes were given to Tripti Tanvi, and all of you had written amazing answers. I went through them, just a quick glance, and I found out every answer had some important value to it. One answer was good in the context building part, one was good in the creativity part, some had good diagrams, some had good introduction and body, some wrote good conclusion. But the agenda in this program is to understand the ways to write a holistic answer. So we'll work for so many days and eventually all of you should have amazing answer writing capabilities. That is the agenda. So let's start with evaluating the top answers for today. For day 1, the highest votes, the most upvotes, the most popular answer of the day was Tripti Tanvi's answer. A big shout out to you, Tripti Tanvi. I'm sure you must have written a very good answer. That is the reason you got so many upvotes. But all of you who are watching this video, I just want to assure you that my agenda, my intention is to bring out the best in you. So there might be some criticism. So take that very constructively, in a very positive way. You don't have to feel let down. You don't have to feel insulted. If you feel, I'm really sorry for that. I always certainly use subtle words. So I am sure I won't be using harsh words on anyone. But even if I do, I apologize upfront for the entire series. And I really hope you'll use those criticism to bring out the best in you. Right, so the parameters for evaluation throughout the series would be to understand the word limit, identifying pillars, building and adhering to the context of the question, the quality of content, creativity and presentation. These are the broad things that you must know in an answer. And these are the things that you must constantly try and improve upon. And then we'll also look at the keywords in every video. What are the basic parameters that you must think before writing the answers and understand the ways of creating those keywords in your head in a very short span in 20 seconds, 30 seconds so that you can start writing an answer and build upon that while you're writing it. So the keywords that I have defined for this answer, basically my expectations were that you would start with a definition of earthquake, a very basic definition, just one line, and then you would talk about the tectonic movements and the different types of tectonic movements and which one is relevant for India. This is just the introductory part, just 2-3 lines so that you can build up the basic criteria of earthquakes and move on to the actual crux. I've seen a lot of students have wasted time defining earthquakes and their types in a very broad sense. That needs to be avoided because the context of the question is a bit different. We'll come to that. And then I was expecting that you would talk about peninsular plate colliding with the Eurasian plate, a slight mention of folding in just a few words, just one line, and then subduction, the mention of heavier plate, which is the Indian subcontinent plate, seismic zones, fault lines, tension releasing. And then the second pillar of the question was about disaster management. So we had to know this linkage, how we have to link the geographical aspect of earthquakes to the disaster management part. And I had specifically quoted that we have to write about urban areas only. You have to point out the mitigation efforts and their impacts in urban areas. So keep that in mind. We'll discuss that in this video only. Right, so let's start with Tanvi's answer. Tanvi writes with a basic introduction, which is very relevant. You have to keep your answer very simple so that someone who's reading clearly understands what you're trying to answer, what you're trying to define, and what direction you're trying to give to the entire answer so that I can think beforehand in that direction. And then if the answer actually lives up to my expectation in the same direction, I would feel that the answer is sufficient. So the introductory part and the beginning of the body part has to give a clear direction where you want to take this answer. And that direction can be different for a number of people. Every person can give a different direction, can come to the same conclusion. The path can be different, but you have to clearly define in the initial wordings which direction you want to take, where you want to move on, and how you would come to the same conclusion. This is important for an examiner to understand what you're trying to do. So Tanvi says earthquakes refer to shaking and trembling of Earth's surface caused by seismic waves generated due to the movement of Earth's crust. Very simple definition, and that gives me an impression that the entire answer would be simplified. Then she talks about India's vulnerability to earthquakes, which is fair enough. She's talking about the natural causes and the man-made causes for India. It is true that you would think about India only, but carefully look at the question. We are talking about the Indian subcontinent. So you have to talk about India, but use the word subcontinent. This is the way of using your words in a clear manner, but talking about the implied thing. Instead of saying India's vulnerability, you could have said Indian subcontinent's vulnerability and then specifically talked about the Indian and the Eurasian plate only in the natural causes. Although you have talked about seafloor displacement, basically I guess you're talking about seafloor spreading in the Andaman Sea region, but I believe that is not required. Although you've written in one single point and I think you have not mentioned it at a later stage, that is justified. But you have to keep in mind that your initial and eventual description has to lie around the Indian and the Eurasian plates only. Then man-made causes, fair enough. You could have made it more concise. You don't need to explain all the man-made causes or other causes in the natural case. Simply write them in one line so that you can save words and you can move on to the actual part, which is the reasons for frequent earthquakes. Instead of reasons of earthquakes, you have to talk about the frequency, the higher frequency of earthquakes. And when you're talking about the frequency, you have to clearly write that earthquakes in general are frequent. There are tectonic movements, collisions happening all over the world. This is a natural phenomena. Anthropogenic reasons can be relevant for the entire earthquake description, but it is not relevant for frequency of earthquakes. For that, you would talk about the various fault lines. You have to clearly mention that there are so many fault lines in these areas where tension is being released in minor packets, which researchers say is absolutely fine. It is a natural phenomenon. So somewhere I feel that in the first page itself, you're losing context. Anyways, let's move on to the next part. What measures must be taken to mitigate their impacts in urban areas? Right, so here, as you have shown the impacts of earthquakes, but you should have shown the impacts of earthquakes in the urban areas because we're talking about the mitigation impacts in urban areas. So this part could have been more relevant, where you would talk about how the earthquakes can cause loss of life, which you have written, and loss of property, etc. And I was also hoping that you would write about the cities that are vulnerable to such impacts. For example, you can talk about Delhi, you can talk about Chandigarh, you can talk about various cities in UP, there is Patna in Bihar, Guwahati in Assam. If you mention a few, just 3-4 cities, it would give a flow to your answer that you're going in the right direction. Then measures to mitigate impact comes at the last part, where you would clearly talk about the basic mitigation efforts, the NDMA guidelines. Those are fair enough. In the conclusion, what you can do is you can talk about the need for clear and fast implementation of the Sendai framework of CDRI. CDRI is basically the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. So this conclusion could have been different. Talk about Sendai and CDRI just to give a positive outlook that more can be done. See, you can't say that the NDMA guidelines are not being followed. That would be untrue. But you can give a positive outlook, something additional, by saying that other frameworks that are global in nature can be implemented at a faster rate, not only in India, but other urban populations as well. Just to give a positive outlook, just to give a broad outlook that you're talking about the entire ecosystem. Right, so good answer overall, Tripti. But I hope that in the next coming days, again, you would write really good answers, and then hopefully I would see you in the most popular answer of the day again. Out of 15, I would give this around 9.5 or maybe 10. Some would say this is a bit lenient marking, but this is the beginning. Hopefully, all of us will keep on increasing our quality in the subsequent days. Right, so the next candidate, a special answer, is from Shipra Oberoi. And the reason for selecting this special answer is because of the beauty of this answer, the presentation, creativity while explaining the answer. Although there are some flaws, but we'll discuss about that also. Shipra again gives a clear introduction like the previous answer. She's drawn a diagram, which is fair enough because it takes less space, which is fine. Then she talks about the types of earthquake. I believe this is not required. You can simply avoid this because we have not talked about the types of earthquakes in the question. It is not asked to you. So you can simply skip it because in this question, I have seen that you have clearly gone beyond the word limit. That is why I am showing this answer. It has good quality, it has good creativity, but there are flaws. It has gone beyond the word limit. But the middle part, where you're explaining the transform, convergence, and divergent boundaries, this can be drawn in the introduction itself. So that in the diagram only you're completing your introduction and you can move on to the body part. And then when you're talking about the cause of frequent earthquakes in India, again talk about the subcontinent, but mention India only. The good part in Chipra's answer is that she has clearly marked the seismic zones, which is amazing. And then she has clearly told what could be the reasons for these frequent earthquakes considering the seismic zones. This is a wonderful way of telling the examiner that you know everything, and I don't even want to read those points. When I see the diagram and I see the headings which are under boxes, I know that the answer is in the right direction. Although you could have skipped the earlier part which I just said, but this way the middle portion is going the right direction. This could be your beginning of the body. And human induced earthquakes is very subtle, is very minimized. So this is fine, as you should not be talking so much about something which is not excessively required. This is fine. And then measures to be taken to mitigate the impact of earthquakes in urban areas. Again, like I said in the previous answer, you should have talked about some cities and the impacts in urban areas. You should mention urban areas. Although if you clearly see the points that you have mentioned apply to urban areas only. But if you mention it upfront, then examiner feels satisfied and you gain more marks. And the mitigation part. Again, same points, looks valid. The presentation is really good. And see, you have mentioned Sendai framework, which is amazing. So overall, I would say this answer is good. It deserves around 11.5 out of 15 marks. Get inside the word limit, cut down your answer, and you could have easily trimmed the answer in the earlier introductory part here, and you would have been inside the word limit for sure. And if you're new to this channel, you're watching this video for the first time, or you're not aware what this SMAP initiative is, I'll put some links in the description. You can read those and you can understand how to join this. One thing is for sure, you'll have to join the Telegram channel of Samajho Learning. You'll have to download the Samajho Learning app from Play Store. You'll find all the links in description. Once you're done with it, you'll get notifications every morning 7 a.m. with the link of the question, and there you can upload your answers. And those of you who want to read more about this context, go back to the same question. There we've added some read more points, some links where you can go and understand what more context, what more quality you can enhance for your answers in future. I hope that you enjoyed watching this video. See you in the next one. Thank you.